Hello everyone and welcome back to the Top 100. Today I'm going to be going through 40 through to 31. These are 10 great games and let me know what you think about them in the comments section below. Let's kick off the list. My number 40 is a game that's relatively recent and it's one of the games that I would go to say if you're trying to get back into the hobby or maybe you've played a couple of games, then Cascadia is going to be a really good option for you. It's got that awesome tile placement that creates a relatively nice looking board underneath, sort of as you're placing them out in your sort of area. You're trying to create territories of maybe this blob of mountain to score big points, this bit of water to score big points, and then you're also placing these animal tiles on top. Certain tokens can only, animals can only go on certain habitat tiles, so you could bear that in mind as you're trying to maybe get the hawks to be as far apart from each other as you can. Maybe you're trying to get a pair of bears. You don't want 3 bears, you want exactly 2 bears adjacent to each other and such. It's a really good sort of dual layered thing because you can create these big terrain areas and score big points from that, and then there's all of the different animals, 5 animals for you to score, and they're all going to score slightly differently. And between one game and another there's more cards, so in one game the salmon might score this way, and in the next you use a different salmon scoring card and you get points a slightly different way. It's a really nice game, and that central choice, because you're always taking a tile and token pairing, that's a really nice choice as well, because you might take the tile and put it over here and then take that token and put it over this part. You don't have to put it sort of on top of the one you've just taken. It can be one you've saved up from earlier. Oh, this is the perfect place for a hawk. When I get one of those tokens, when it comes out the bag, I'm definitely doing that. A lot of good choice, and it's a really pleasant game to play, and that's Cascadia. My number 39 is a game where a panda is eating up a gardener's bamboo. It's the sort of rivalry between growing the bamboo, trying to get it to certain heights, and then the bamboo going around and munching certain colours of bamboo, placing out tiles in Tekken Oko. It's not the most complicated game, it's kind of full of luck, but it's a really pleasant family theme where you're slowly building out this garden with different coloured tiles, the bamboos growing up on them. You can get an expansion which adds like baby pandas into the mix if you really want. And yeah, there's the luck of the rolling the dice, what tiles you draw from the top of the pile when you're adding them, because you're trying to maybe get like a pattern colour or a big blob of green or pink tiles next to each other. So yeah, there's a lot of luck, even drawing from the objective decks. You're like, alright, do I want the panda to be eating? Well, I could move the panda quite easily, so maybe I take that. Oh, I've actually already got at least one, I've got one green bit of bamboo already, and stuff like that. But it's just really pleasant. The board builds out nicely. There's some cool things like watering different parts of the tiles so the bamboo will actually grow. So at times you get loads of bamboo growing, and that's quite a cool thing. It's odd. Normally when a game does that and you're having to do lots of stuff, it feels like a lot of admin. In this game you're sort of building up these bamboo bits, and it kind of feels like fun admin of, oh, all of these ones here need to grow 1. Okay, yeah, done. It's nice and quick and really good fun. If you don't mind a little bit of luck, but the pandas and the gardeners moving around, growing, eating a bit and stuff like that, and trying to get those nice little objectives, it's a lot of good fun and very simple when it hits the table. At number 38 is a flip and write game, nearly said roll and write, that is just, it takes the original Welcome To and blasts it to the moon. It's Welcome to the Moon. This is potentially one of the only legacy style campaigny flip and writes that you can just do and do again. There's My City, which is sort of in that ballpark. It at least feels like it is, even though it's like polyomino tiles and stuff. But in Welcome to the Moon, you start off on the rocket ship doing the flippin' right goodness that is in Welcome 2, where you're filling in rows of houses. You're trying to get, every time a number's used, you're putting it somewhere, and to the left has to be lower, to the right has to be higher, and then you're triggering a few different sort of extra bits and pieces depending on where you put the number. In the original, which is very good, Welcome 2, you're like putting swimming pools into certain houses and stuff for bonus points. In Welcome to the Moon, well, it changes. Because in your first one, you're on a rocket, then you're going up to the moon, beyond, and so much more, because you're playing through, I think it's 9, it might be 8 different boards, which is just absolutely fantastic because it's so different. You're using the same cards, the same numbers and stuff, but in one game the little robot might trigger you drawing a bit of the roof in. On another one it might be allowing you to draw a bit of a connection somewhere else, and it's very, very different from one game to the next, and I really did enjoy it. I think it takes exactly what I like about Welcome 2 and just amplified it across 8 maps. It's certainly the version I'd recommend because I like the original, but then it's like you want to get map packs to keep that freshness and sort of have differences. Welcome to the Moon just comes with basically 8 boards, and you can play them separately. You don't have to play them as a campaign, but you're going to want to because it is that good, and that's Welcome to the Moon. My number 37 is another Jumbo edition from the same company that brought Big City, and that's Container 10th Anniversary Jumbo Edition. It needs that full title because it really had jumbified the components in terms of you've got these huge chunky ships that you're putting these containers onto and pushing them around the table. It's a game that I wasn't excited or really knew much about until Shut Up and Sit Down did a review on it. They were glowing and I was like, wow, this sounds incredibly dry but incredibly interesting. As on your turn you've got like a couple of things you can do. You can maybe create some new containers from your workshops, but you have to pay like the person to your right to do so. Then you can maybe go and buy some containers to put into your front warehouse, and you can do that from someone sort of around the table. You're setting the price of those as you were setting the price of the stuff you've just made from your factories. Maybe someone else then sails their ship in and buys from your warehouse. That's how you're getting money. But it's a very closed system of money. At the start at least, everyone's only got so much to play with until someone takes some containers to auction. Now this is where it gets going, because all of that, which is kind of okay and interesting, setting prices, oh, you've put your purple containers at 3 and your black containers at 2. Okay, well if I put my purple containers at 2 and my black containers at 2, if someone wants to buy both of those, they're going to come over because mine are cheaper overall and stuff like that. And it's interesting if you've got like the only person that's got any of the brown containers, maybe you can set the price that little bit higher if people are wanting to get them into play. And that's where the auction part comes in. They go and deliver to like this special island and everyone bids with the money they've got. How much do you want the up to 5 containers they're delivering? Because they're worth a different amount of points for you as all of the other players. Maybe for me, the grey white containers, they're worth 10 points a pop. The next player, maybe they're only worth 2 to them, so they're not as interested in this ship that's delivering loads. But you're throwing in cards as you're bidding, sort of you reveal your bid, whoever's done the most. That player then has a choice. Do I accept this huge amount of money and get the same amount from the bank? That's a good amount of money coming into the game. Or do I say no and pay that amount out of the game, to the bank effectively, to keep them for myself? But then there's not much money. You know, the more people do that, the more money goes out of the game rather than coming in. And it means no one's got much money. So you really start being like, okay, really low bids. And games can go very differently depending on how much people splash down the cash. The fact that then there's a twist at the end of whichever container colour you've got most of, you don't score any points for, is a really good twist. Your browns are scoring you 10 points each. That's what you've got most of. You're not getting nothing for them. So you maybe want to rack up a load of the stuff that's normally only going to score you 2 points. So that's what you effectively don't score for. Really interesting. It's a hard game to sort of get someone excited by, but it's all that sort of bidding and setting prices that's actually a lot of fun when you're doing it, even if it sounds really boring about container ships. But yeah, that's Container 10th Anniversary Jumbo Edition, a great game. My number 36 is a Stonemaier game, which when it first released I think got a bit of criticism because of the way it looks, and that's Scythe. Now, it looks stunning, so what do I mean? Well, it looks like it should be a game about these huge mechs smashing into each other in a war-y sort of environment, and well, it's not really sort of that sort of game. It's very much a sort of Euro-y game where you're managing your actions, you're putting your pawn on this of your 4 actions, you're hopefully doing the top and bottom row action of that. Then on the next turn you can't do that again, so you have to move it to one of the other 3 sections. You can sort of upgrade these actions by moving cubes off of things and then putting them back onto costs. So the way that works is maybe you're getting 2 movement instead of just 1 movement, and you're putting this cube back onto something else, so it's like you have to spend 3 grain instead of 4 grain to do another action. So there's a great little upgrade stuff there, and there is a little bit of that conflict, but it's much more... In Twilight Imperium 4, for instance, there's a lot of aspects of that game which are, I've got a big army here, don't come at me, but maybe if they do, there's a big fight. In Scythe, it's similar to that, where I've got a mech there, do you really want us to fight? It's kind of, you're almost there as that the mech is almost a threat, but in this game, you do want to do a little bit of combat to maybe knock someone off somewhere where you need for scoring or an objective or something like that. But it's definitely not as much of a combat game as it looks. Saying that, as I said, the look is stunning. I really love the artwork of Scythe. I'm very excited to see what the sort of sequel, it kind of looks Scythe-ish, not too much. I'm excited to see where that goes, but I'm also just excited to see more of this artwork. And at some point, I'll get the expansion that adds in sort of semi-legacy stuff, because that does sound like it raises the game even higher for so many people. I think I just need to make sure I've got a group to play that with first. But yes, Scythe, for all the different factions having their own abilities, working out how can I trigger these actions in the best way, so this turn I get the grain, that next time I've got it to spend to do this upgrade, to make that better, to do this, to put these workers down. It's a really good puzzle sort of thing. It's just maybe not what people originally thought it was going to be. I don't think people go into it anymore thinking like that. I think they just go into it enjoying it, because Scythe is a top game. My number 35 has a huge problem with it to me, and that's every time I play this, I have to go, or want to go, and watch the entire series of Battlestar Galactica. It is a game that, beyond all others, captures the IP perfectly. It's just so perfect. I'm a huge fan of Battlestar Galactica, the sci-fi series where there are Cylons, some of them that look identical to humans, and some of them that don't even know they are Cylons until partway through the story of Battlestar. and it's perfectly done in the board game. As maybe only one person at the start of the game is a Cylon. They get that card, their secret role. They're trying to screw things up a little bit as you're doing these tasks and challenges. But halfway through the game, another round of those cards are dealt out. And someone that was a human can find out, actually, oh, I have been a Cylon this whole time. And now you're on that Cylon team. There's very few games, that do something like that, a mid-game twist that change the team you're on one of these social deduction games. Now, bear in mind, this is a social deduction game that isn't 20 minutes long, it's like 3 hours long. But there's so many good parts on top of that sort of brilliant capturing of the theme. It's how the game sows sort of mistrust and sort of unsurety, making players unsure exactly what's going on. Because as you're doing these challenges, there's stuff where you have to like put cards in, and these cards can often, there's like one of the values on it can be good, so if you're trying to pass it, you're going to put one of those cards in. Now, sometimes you put a card in that's good, but whenever you're doing that, you always take one from the top of a shuffled deck and put it in. Now, what that means is someone doesn't have to have been bad putting a card in, but there could be a card that fails it in the mix, and you're all of a sudden thinking and looking round at who put cards in there. One of you has failed it, but maybe it was the deck. So you could actually start, I believe you can technically start with everyone being good, but not know it and not quite trust everyone around the table. It just so perfectly captures the theme. And for the Cylons, even once you've been found out, it's not game over. You could still potentially win and interact from like the Cylon base star. My biggest issue is I have to watch this show or bits of the show every time I play, and if you want to go and play this, it's a lot of money because it's completely out of print and it goes for ludicrous amounts of money. But if you get a chance to play it, I'd highly recommend Battlestar Galactica. My number 34 is one where a few years ago I'd probably have said it's well up there, it's maybe top 20, something like that, but it's hard to play Pandemic Legacy again. Now, I've kind of bundled every season, the season 1, 2 and 0 of the Legacy campaign. I've bundled in Basic Pandemic, I've got like the special edition there on the shelf, Pandemic Iberia, which I do think's a little bit better than the base game. I've bundled all of that together, not Rapid Response, that sort of weird real-time thing. I didn't enjoy that one as much. But mostly it's Pandemic Legacy Season 1, but I've bundled it all here. Now, why? It was a phenomenal experience. Me and my wife played through the 3 seasons, and each of them has their own sort of quirks and problems and brilliant parts. But Pandemic Legacy was probably the first Legacy experience that we really dove into and enjoyed, as you're playing the regular Pandemic in sort of January, it's called like game 1, and you're going through the calendar year. But all of a sudden at the end, or partway through a month, something happens, an event that doesn't happen in the normal Pandemic game, and maybe slightly makes one of the viruses harder to clear off the board. But over time, your characters get better at different things. They get sort of abilities, powers that only you can do. They can also get negative effects that mean they struggle to do one thing. Maybe they can't enter certain cities or whatever. I don't want to give spoilers away, but it really changes up the gameplay. A slight fault is that maybe by the end it's just got so many different things in it. It's not the simple sort of logical Pandemic, but you've gone on this amazing journey through to the very end, you will sort of, well, not everyone seems to finish it, but I would struggle to have ever left it part way through. We did have a bit of a gap between some of the months. I think we waited a good 3-4 months. But then as soon as it got back to the table, we blitzed the rest of the months, the rest of the games, over like a week. We just were like, oh, we've got to carry on. We've got to carry on. We've got to find out how this ends. And you can't really replay that. You could go and get another copy, but it wouldn't be quite the same. I think maybe it's been long enough now that maybe it would be. I do wish that some of these legacy games like that were in some way resettable. So yeah, you could play it again, but you don't need to be ripping everything up, I don't think. It's part of the fun, it's part of the wow, this is different, as you literally rip a card up. It feels a bit weird doing it for the first time, and it's still an incredible experience. If you've not played it, Pandemic Legacy Season 1, phenomenal. 2 we found was a little bit of a drop, and then 0 was sort of in the middle of the two. It returned to a very decent game. But the first one, it's super deserves this a space on the list. Struggling to sort of where it should have been because of it being legacy. You can't replay it. That's why I've sort of bundled Pandemic as a blob. But yeah, a great experience and a great legacy game that really sort of got not just me but many people excited for legacy. Some have let us down, Pandemic didn't. My number 33 is a very small sort of game compared to the last. It's not too small, but it's Santorini. It's based very loosely on the island with those lovely white buildings, little sort of blue tops on them, and that's about as where that theme runs out, so apart from sort of Greekish sort of gods. It's kind of closer to like a chessy sort of game. Now it is 2 to 3 players, but that feels a bit odd, so it's basically a 2-player game in my opinion. As you're sort of moving your people around the board, trying to get them up onto certain heights, but normally that's what you're trying to do, get to like a high up position. I think it's like on a 3 stack to win. But in some games, your power is that you might win in a very different way, and you could try and trap someone else's dudes sort of in somewhere where they can't jump up because it's too tall, and it just creates a really nice looking board. And it's those powers that just make every game a little bit different. Maybe they can build too high instantly, or something that seems crazily broken, but you've also got something that's, well, if you exploit it, just as good. Now, there's a sort of a sequel that's New York. I've not played that. I've not played it when it was originally released, or like, I mean, it looked really basic originally, and then this sort of the standard one that's available everywhere came out with these lovely white building pieces that stack up and the blue domes. It just looks really nice when you get it to the table. It's certainly a bit of an eye-catching one, certainly for what is effectively an abstract strategy game, but it's well worth playing at Santorini. My number 32 is a game that the first time I played it with, I think, 5 people at a convention and completely dismissed it. This is Red Rising. And it's this high on my list because playing it again since, first of all, I'm pretty confident not every rule was done right at the convention. And 2, I will not play this game with people that are too analysis paralysis sort of prone, you know, if they're going to take too long on their turns, or at a high player count. It works so well at a lower player count. It works extremely well at 2 players, as you are using cards to create a little team, basically, from the Red Rising universe. A fantastic book series, by the way. I've read the first trilogy, absolutely incredible. And actually, that book series made the game made me want to read the books, and the books made me want to play the game again and again. And it does make sense. The characters are slightly thematic. The sort of the main character of the first book, Darrow, well, he does want to be with certain characters from the book. I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to spoil the book. But that card gets extra points if they are with at least one of those characters in your team at the end of the game. And there's a really nice sort of trade-off throughout as you're trying to take certain actions to boost yourself in different ways. But you're also conscious of, well, this card's not scoring me money points. How can I get rid of that and maybe get a new one that works and syncs up with these others? It's sort of a longer version of Marvel Remix, if you've played that, where you're trying to sort of get a hand of cards that score well together. I just think the slower pace, the slightly longer version of this makes it feel better. It makes it feel much less chanced because you've often got a number of different options of who you can pick up. They might all be bad for you, but maybe on another turn at least two of them are good for you and you're like, right, I'm going to get rid of this pink card. One of those two golds is going to be great because this character needs a gold with them. How does this power interact with there? And there's got stuff when they're played. Maybe they do something special. Other cards allow you to get more cards into your hand, which isn't too easy to do. Normally it's basically play one, gain one. Sometimes it gets you an extra one. That can be really good unless the extra one that you're going to end up with means, oh, he didn't want to be with a red, and that, oh dear. But there's some really good sort of choices here as you're trying to play these actions, trying to build out this team of characters, swapping them in and out, trying to use their abilities, but sometimes it's like, oh, I want to use this ability but I need them in the team because they work with this one and they're scoring me loads of points. Great game, great book series, at least the first trilogy. Excited to jump into the second trilogy of books very soon. That's Red Rising. And last but not least, it's a game that most people say is more of an activity than a game, and this is The Mind. This is a fantastic experience, game, whatever you want to call it, for just putting on a table and entertaining between like 2 and 4, 5 players you can do, even though the rules aren't really made for that. As you're trying to, basically it's a card deck that's 1 to 100. You've got so many lives and so many shurikens. We'll come on to that in a minute. On level 1, everyone gets a card. They look at it, they can't tell anyone what it is, they can't really talk at all. You can sort of do some weird hints like, well, if I was hungry, I'd be getting the Chinese menu out of the cupboard. And just something weird and abstract like that. I found that to be very entertaining rather than just no talking at all. But officially, no talking. Play your cards in order. And you're looking around the table and you're like, well, there's 3 of us. I've got 40 or 41, let's say. Surely one of you two has a lower card. How long do I wait? And the other players are thinking just that. You get through that round, everyone's getting 2 cards. And so on and so on as you're trying to beat these levels and try and play them in order. If you don't, then you lose a life. You can use the shurikens to be like, everyone play or just discard in front of you your lowest card, just to give everyone a bit of information. And you're trying to get through as many of these sort of levels as you want. It's just a weird cooperative silent experience that's full of so much pressure and tension, but when you manage it, it's incredible, especially when there's a quick run. So like maybe I've got 11, someone else has got 12, but then I've got 13. So I play the 11 and then I go to play the 13 and someone's panicking like, ah! with a 12 across the table to try and make sure that I've not played my card. Some new players will be like, oh, I've got sort of 20 and 25. They play their 20, they play their 25, and everyone else is like, are we okay? Everyone looks around and sort of like, yeah, somehow. No one had a number between 21 and 24. Whew, you sigh of relief, you carry on, and it's a really unique experience that you should definitely at least try once. It's not going to be for everyone, but it's one of those games that you can easily throw in your bag and go and play somewhere. I've played it on a high-speed train in China. I've played it in a train, like a bus on the way somewhere in the UK. I've played it in so many different locations with different people, including not even always people that spoke English as their first language, and they still got the game, understood it, and actually enjoyed it as well. That's the mind. Anyway, that about wraps us up today. Another, well, to me, 10 great games, but let me know what you think in the comment section below. Which out of these 10 were your favourite? Make sure you subscribe for the rest of the top 100 and loads of other stuff like news videos, reviews, and at some point when I finish this, some other like top 10, top 5 lists and stuff along the way. Until next time, have a great day gaming.